Stephen A. Smith Show. My next guest made headlines recently as he and Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers have exchanged critical takes on each other this past week. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's a TV analyst, a host of the award-winning The Pivot podcast. And he's my brother, the one and only Ryan Clark is in the house right here. What's going on, Big Time? How you doing, man? How's everything?
What's up, my guy? Listen, I'm out here in South Bend, man, just getting ready for the college playoff game. But, you know, when your brother holler at you and needs to get you on the show, you show up.
Damn right. I appreciate that because I would have got on you if you avoided me. Because I understand. Because it's snowing out there. Notre Dame's getting ready to go against Indiana.
Yeah.
Your son, Jordan, plays for Notre Dame. We'll get into that in just a second. But before I do any of that, I want to start off by reminding the audience why I asked you to come on here today. Earlier this week on the Pat McAfee Show, the one and only Aaron Rodgers had this to say, referring to you. Listen up.
Say whatever the fuck you want about me, I don't care. But just before you do it, whether you state your name, your accolades, pronouns, whatever it is, just state your vax status so that anything you say afterwards gets put in the right light. Just get it out there. Because then when you say things about me, people can at least be like, oh, you are captured by the multi-billion-dollar propaganda psyop, and you're still upset about it.
Okay.
This will help things out.
Yeah, this is good. This will settle it all down. I appreciate that. And
Hey, you know what I mean? Just put that in just so everybody knows where you're coming from.
You gave a 4-minute response over social media. I played half of that here the other day. As we sit here today reflecting on what you said about Aaron Rodgers, talk about why you felt the need to respond to what he had to say and what kind of message you wanted to send to everybody.
Yeah, I think the first thing, Stephen A., and you know it like I do, when we talked about that on First Take that day, it was really the first time I'd actually heard what he said on Pat McAfee. And when you mention our network, ESPN, while being on our network, ESPN, and many of my colleagues that are former players, then I feel like I have the right to respond. And, you know, he addressed me during that PSA on Pat McAfee. He never used my name, but he mentioned, obviously, the lapel pin with my initials. And I think the part that rubbed me in a way where I felt like I had to respond was the whole vaccination thing, because I feel like he uses that to get those people who are of like mind when it comes to whether it's vaccination, partisanship, whatever that is, to try to ignore the facts. The facts were that what he said was hypocritical. The facts were that he has an issue with people talking about his play in a negative way when that's what the film is telling us. And you know it like I know it, Stephen A. I've said 1,000,000 times to you on your show, I think he's the best quarterback I've ever played against. But that doesn't in any way negate what we're seeing from him now. And then the arrogance, the smugness, the entitlement he displays as a person when it comes to people who object or people who see things differently than him. I mean, I'm just tired of it. And I'm tired of people allowing him to say whatever the hell he wants to say, whenever the hell he wants to say it, without in any way pushing back. And so if you can come for me and my colleagues, I can respond. And I have no issue standing 10 toes down on whatever I say.
It was hard for me to, push back on his right to clap at you, RC, not about his game, but when we were on First Take that day, you're a highly intelligent brother. You're very selective with your words. You know exactly what you're saying, and you mean what the hell you say. And you called him a fraud. And,
yes.
and I want you to expound on why did you feel the need to go to that length? And based on you saying that, do you feel like that gave him the right to respond to you the way that he did?
One, first off, he absolutely has a right to respond to me in any way that he wants to. He's a grown man, Stephen A. And, like if you feel some type of way, like you get to say it the same way I get to respond to him. Now, what's different about us is the things that I say about him will be viewed from a professional perspective, right? I am an NFL analyst. And so in responding to Aaron Rodgers, I need to be able to respond with facts. I need to be able to respond with things that are true. I can't just come out and insult his fashion. I can't just come out and say things that make zero sense, like state your vaccination status, right? I don't get to do that. I have to be factual. I have to be to the point. I have to be clear. And so, yeah, like if I call him a fraud, he can respond to that. But you are a fraud if you're sitting on ESPN being paid by Pat McAfee, who later admitted that he pays him because of what having Aaron Rodgers on his show does for him. I in no way got a problem with that. But to call out former players while on a former player show, yes, that makes you a fraud to me. To secondly come back and say that you got to state your vaccination status because your vaccination status tells me what perspective and point of view I view Aaron Rodgers from, like, that's bullcrap. Like, it's absolutely, like, that's not why I feel any way about him. Kirk Cousins, who was extremely honest about his vaccination status and said that he would not receive the vaccine, is one of the more well-liked players in all the NFL, is a player that we all know and respect for his honesty, for the way he approaches the game, for the way he approaches people. He in no way receives any of the criticism he receives for his play based on that. Aaron Rodgers needs you to believe that because he needs us to believe that he's still the same dude he always been. And the one thing that I did in making sure I spoke about Aaron Rodgers from an unbiased perspective was I included none of the stories I know about him from people who have played with him, people who have coached there.
I want you to stop right there because, see, RC, you're too good looking, bro, to be having the phone cutting off half your head. I need you to
remove it.
There you go, right there. Right there. Yes. Now we see you in all your glory. You don't have a hairline to hide like I do. You don't have the hairline to hide like I do, all right? But listen, let me get back to it because you brought up Aaron Rodgers in terms of you didn't bring up some of the things that folks have said about him. Let's get to the nuts and bolts of it. Again, you played. I didn't. A lot of folks that talk about it didn't. But you talk about how you've spoken to players, you've spoken to coaches, you're inside those locker rooms. You work on Monday Night Countdown, okay, doing Monday Night Football for ESPN. You're NFL Live, a contributor. You contribute to that show, First Take, Get Up, the list goes on and on. Plus, you got your own Inside the NFL show, all right? You talk to a lot of people in the NFL. What are the stories about Aaron Rodgers that would make somebody like you say he's a fraud?
Like, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna say this truly out of respect for you. Like, those are those people's stories to tell.
Okay.
And I don't want to do that because I think it now opens up a different conversation between me and Aaron Rodgers,
Understood.
which right now is him saying things that are very superficial, very surface level, and it's me continuing to do my job in a professional way. And I don't have a personal issue with Aaron Rodgers. And I also know that, like, and you know me well enough to know I probably move differently than Aaron Rodgers. I could say this to you. I reached out to Pat McAfee because there were some parts of Aaron's, sort of appearance on his show where, jealousy was brought out. And, Aaron says at the end, there's a respect level, and that's why Pat McAfee can get certain guests. And that was why in my response to him, I listed the sort of people I've sat down with on the pivot. Right. And so I think part of the piece that made me call Aaron Rodgers a fraud is his continual deflection of things that matter in order to feed his fan base, right? In order to get people who are like-minded, people who would want to rail against someone like me, to find a way to get them to do it. To talk about like what my vac status is, I mean, and to say that you looked it up, the only thing I ever said about him was he was deceitful. And of course, Stephen A., I am vaccinated because I don't have a spleen. I don't have a gallbladder. My immune system is deficient. But I think tell me what meeting you've been in, right? Where we've said before speaking about Aaron Rodgers, make sure we speak a certain way because of his vac status.
That has never happened.
That's never happened. And so I think the other big piece for me is to sit there with Pat McAfee and continue to behave as if you're in some way being railroaded. In some way, a narrative is being driven about you outside of what the play is. It is fraudulent to sit in front of the TV and pretend to build up teams and teammates, and then to behave in locker rooms in ways I have been told he behaves. Yeah, it makes you a fraud. Own it. Own who you are. Own the times you've gone to the front office to talk about players because they aren't behaving in a way that you want them to. And I think all of that, to me, is things I don't agree with about Aaron Rodgers. But as I said as well, also stories that are supposed to be inside the locker room.
Ryan Clark, as a football analyst, tell us what we have seen from Aaron Rodgers this year on the football field compared to what we're accustomed to seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing, Stephen, is we should be seeing something different. He's a 41-year-old coming off of Achilles. We see how that has hampered Kirk Cousins. But what we've seen is a slower decision maker. What we've seen is a guy who's missed passes that he normally and that we've seen him complete. We've seen Aaron Rodgers be the reason the New York Jets have lost football games. And all of those things are fair to say. Is their defense missing pieces that has not made it as good as it was in years Aaron Rodgers was there? Absolutely. But Aaron Rodgers has gotten everything he's asked for there, Stephen A. You wanted Devontae Adams, we got you Devontae Adams. You needed Alan Lazard, we got you Alan Lazard. Garrett Wilson was a guy that had 1,000-yard seasons without you. This is a team that was 7-10 last year with Zach Wilson at the helm that has to win 3 of their games to equal that win total, to equal that record. We've seen below level play. And I think at some point, people are going to point to the stats, right? At the end of the season, he may finish with close to 30 tubs. He may finish at 8 to 10 interception. And they're going to say, okay, this is play you can win with. But it's the 21st QBR in all of the league. And when you're behind, you get to throw the ball as much as you freaking want to. And so I just don't think that he's played at a level that has elevated the New York Jets. And he also hasn't led at that level. When you see the frustration from Garrett Wilson on the sideline, when you see Garrett Wilson and he having the training camp arguments that they've been having, that's a problem. When you talk about Robert Saleh being fired, part of it is Aaron Rodgers' play. Part of it is also Aaron Rodgers' leadership. It's Aaron Rodgers' rhetoric. And to me, like, none of those things beget a leader, especially with the experiences that he's had in the NFL.
Let me get a little personal with you in this regard. When he talks about former players implying that haven't done what he has done, I want to go macro perspective and extend beyond Aaron Rodgers, because I'm quite sure he's not the only player that feels that way when receiving criticism over the airwaves. My attitude is this. Okay, it's the media. You get to say we never played. It's pundits and commentators, etc. But in your case, in the case of Swagoo, our colleague Marcus Spears, the Dan Orlovskis, the Cam Newtons of the world, the Shannon Sharps, and various others that we're blessed to work with every single week, right?
Yeah.
Y'all have all played. So it's like, how is it as a former player hearing a player say to you all, who the hell are y'all, when you're actually one of them? I don't understand that. How do you take that?
I mean, isn't that part of the arrogance, though, Stephen A? Isn't that part of the fraudulence that if you aren't saying the things that he wants you to say, now let's compare resumes. Now let's compare the things that we've accomplished, careers. And I get it, right? It's a way to deflect from what the true issues are. Like for me, I'd say, hey, let's sit down and break down the film then. Like, let's watch it. Let's watch you throw the football inside to Mike Williams against the Minnesota Vikings and lose that game. And then part of the fraud piece for me, Stephen A, is calling Mike Williams out after the Bills game for not running down the red line. You tell me what leaders, what good quarterbacks do that. that throw their other players under the bus. We watch this man do that, and that's part of why I called him a fraud. And so, to me, like him calling out former players doesn't bother me, right? It goes along with his lack of accountability. It goes along with his feeling that he is above reproach. And piece of it is, right, and is that there are some former analysts who won't call him out about certain things. And so now when I reply in the way I do, or when I have the feelings I do, I'm the anomaly, right? Like I'm the guy that's wrong. I'm the guy that has a problem with him. When now I'm just a dude that feels a certain way, so I tell my truths. And so he can say all he wants about us. I think what I found hypocritical about it was that he was on a show with a former player, with two former players, actually.
Yeah.
A show that employs another former player in Darius Butler. And so I think for me, it's, bro, you sitting up here getting paid money by Pat McAfee to do the exact same thing that you're railing against. And that's the bigger problem.
From a macro perspective, you being the host of The Pivot, y'all been doing a great job making major
Thank you.
noise. Major props to you guys as well. And your career especially, you've really ascended and you deserve everything. Let me take that back. You deserve more than you're getting. I'm just going to say it. You deserve more than you're
Thank you,
getting,
brother.
okay? But
Thank you.
I say this to you. As you look at the media landscape that you are now a part of, and you analyze and witness today's culture compared to what it used to be, how concerned are you, maybe not for yourself, but for the industry at large moving forward, knowing that these athletes, it seems their sensitivity level has heightened enormously, probably because of the advent of social media and voices coming from everywhere. How concerned are you about that having, dare I say, a negative effect on sports moving forward?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that happens, Stephen A, is that athletes will try to lessen the authenticity and honesty of our voices, right? If you listen to the way Aaron Rodgers attacked me in his second appearance on Pat McAfee, he didn't attack my words. He didn't try to attack any facts. What he tried to do was win the emotional battle. He tried to discredit me by saying there's no way that he's being honest about me because he disagrees with my vaccination status, which I don't. I don't really care. It's your decision. It's your body. But instead of saying, hey, Ryan Clark is wrong about me being hypocritical because of X, Y, and Z. Ryan Clark is wrong to call me arrogant because of X, Y, and Z. Ryan Clark is wrong to call me a fraud because of X, Y, and Z. See, that is what athletes will do now. They won't have to combat you with facts because, in truth, Stephen A, outside of people like you, maybe, Shay Sharp, the current athlete is more popular than I am. The current athlete is more popular than Swagoo is, than Dan Orlovsky is, and those sorts of former athletes. So I don't really have to be truthful. I don't have to be factual. I can use the emotion of the fan base I've built based off of the skill in my sport. And I felt like that's what Aaron Rodgers was trying to do. But I'm not scared about what this means for media because we all have to adapt, right? We all have to adjust. I mean, look at yourself. You're the biggest name in sports media in linear TV, and you're now creating this platform for yourself that's amazing, created by you, controlled by you, because you do understand the media landscapes and the way that it's changing. And I think that's what we all have to do. We all have to be able to evolve. But I think even if you look at my 4-minute response that I posted on social, it gives me an opportunity to take control of the narrative of self, the narrative that's being painted of me. And, I appreciate those opportunities as well.
How mindful and cognizant, or should I say, how much does it really affect you and how you go about the business of you doing your job on an everyday basis, considering the growth and the maturation that has taken place in you. When you look at the pivot, you look at ESPN, listen, we have a voice. We always call RC. We always call RC. We want to hear what you have to say. We want the audience to hear what you have to say. You've been on me, or you've been on TV with me on several occasions, and there's times that I could say something, I'm going like this now. Let him say it. Let him speak on this. He's more qualified because it's important that your voice is heard. How mindful are you of that now at this point in time in your career on a personal level than you were, say, 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
I'm very mindful of it, to be honest, Stephen A. Like I think about you often, and I get to talk about you a lot because everybody, that's the first thing I'm always asked. And they're always like, man, how you deal with that dude? And I always tell them, nobody in that building has stood up for me the way that you have. Nobody in that building has advised me in that way. I said, he's taught me so much, whether it's by actual advice or being able to watch him. And I think the thing that I've learned, Stephen A., is like, these are the things we ask for by working hard, right? You want your voice to matter.
Right.
And what I've learned is the other side, right? The people that push against the things that we say, a lot of times they show me that I'm on the right path. They show me that I'm where I want to be. And I do get what I represent. I represent the next former player who wants to be Ryan Clark, the next former player who wants to have the platform that I do. And so that's important to me that I represent that in the right way. But it's also important to me that I stay authentic. It's also important to me that I remain myself. And I think that was a big part of my second response to Aaron Rodgers. And I can tell you this and share it with you. I had actually done something the day before, afterwards. And it was before Pat and I text message. And part of it involved Pat, not in like a disrespectful way in any way, because I have no issues with him, but it talked about his show, the platform, and him giving Aaron Rodgers the space to say those things. And I didn't post that because I was like, nah, as a man, if Pat and I have no issues, if Pat and I have had these conversations, he doesn't need to be involved in any way in this response so it can be skewed that we have a problem. Because I recognize the power of my voice and the way that people will try to attack and critique and pick apart everything I do. And so I made sure to be smart about that. Also, in my response to Aaron Rodgers, I made sure my tone was a professional tone. I made sure my words were factual. I made sure I didn't insult him. I thought about the first response on First Take, and I said, well, I feel like a lot of these things were taken this way because of my wording, right? Fraud, arrogant. Let me be extremely careful in how I do that and make sure that my words are as poignant as possible because I understand the voice. And like, I worked for this. I earned this, and I want to protect it as well.
How much does your son, being a college player at Notre Dame right now, about to play tonight, by the way, against Indiana. I'm picking Notre Dame to win this game. How much does your son, knowing he's in the sports world, he's a player, how much does that affect how you speak and how you disseminate messages to the masses at this point in time?
You know, what's funny about it, Stephen A., is when I didn't post the thing I recorded that involved Pat, I was actually done, right? I was like, man, I'm not going to say nothing. I'm going to let it go. I couldn't go to sleep, Stephen A., because I felt tried. Like, I felt like he tried to play me, and like I had no resolve. Like, I didn't speak up for myself. And I think that matters to me more when it pertains to my son than what I say in the media as it pertains to analyzing football. I want him to know that we always have to worry about the self-respect. We always have to worry about the last name. We always have to be concerned with the authenticity. We always have to know that when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we were true to who God made us to be. And I think that that's the most important thing for me. And as far as him, he has a podcast here called The Irish Scoop. And I was walking down the hall last night, and this lady stopped me, and she goes, a white woman, actually, and she says, I love everything you do on TV, and I 100% agree with you on what you said to Aaron Rodgers. And then the last thing she told me was, and I love your son's podcast. You know, and like for me, man, that meant the world to me because, you know, I've worked hard in both careers. And for him to be doing both of the things that I've been able to feed my family with, and to be doing them at a high level and to have people take recognition of that, really is a blessing for us.
Yeah. You know, listen, man, I mean, I wanted to bring you on the show because you're my brother. I love you, and I know I will vouch for your integrity all day, any time of the week. And I knew that you came across professionally and what have you, but you had to clap
Thank
back
you.
because I know how you roll. You ain't backing up from
You know.
anybody. I know
Hey, you've
this.
been there.
I know this. I know this.
Yeah.
All right. But listen, man, before I let you get on out of here, since I got you here, man, I need your help. I was going to do these quick takes by myself. I got a couple of NFL games to get to you.